Hello, can you guys hear me on there? Let me see. Nice. Figured it out. Okay, let me get a little bit of hiccup there. Hello, can you guys hear me on there? Let me just silence this. Turn my light in my office up. Sorry guys, just having a little bit of technical difficulties. Story of your life if you do kind of stuff online. Okay, let me just get set up here real quick. There are a couple things that I want to talk about that we didn't get to on Tuesday. One of the things I wanted to address with you guys is I realized after I rewatched my live stream last time that it wasn't capturing the entire frame. It wasn't capturing my entire screen. It was like cut off on the side. I apologize. I'll run over some of the panels and stuff that you guys couldn't see that were on the right hand side of After Effects. So we'll go over that here in just a little bit. And let me just do a couple more things real quick. Thank you for being patient with everything while I get this all kind of figured out. Can you guys hear me? If anyone's in there, the chat or anything, can you say hello or hello. Hello. Let me go here. Bring up. We're gonna go over. Okay. I promise I hope next time we don't have this kind of issue again because it's just a pain. But I just want to go over a couple things. I know a few of you guys had some problems with like logging in and stuff to some of the different programs. I recommend, I set an announcement out today, but I recommend what you guys do is first reread through the instructions and make sure you're reading through the entire module. There's a lot of things. It's a very dense page for the technology login challenge. There's a lot of information on there, but just go through it nice and slow, one thing at a time. If you can't get it right the first time, restart, try and go through it again. And then, you know, if you're still getting issues, if you're going to write me, that's perfectly fine. You know, the questions are fine. But I need like kind of details and examples of what's going on because I might not be able to just understand right off the bat. Unless, you know, if you're just like, hey, I can't log in. I don't know what the error is, so I can't try and troubleshoot it. And a lot of working in animation or digital media in general is going to be troubleshooting because a lot of times you do come into issues with like software and with updates and sort of weird things like that. And so you end up Googling a lot of stuff. That's really the big thing that I recommend is make Google your best friend because you will use it. So if you Google some things, if you're spending more than like a half an hour trying to log in to the same thing or get set up on the getting set up on the same like program or online app or something like that, then yeah, go ahead and write me. And I saw a couple of you reach out on Slack. Great. I also saw all of your guys' work you were putting in submitting on Slack, which looks awesome. I'm excited to see what kind of stuff you guys do this semester. And way to get on that. A lot of you guys, I'd say 99% of you guys completed the syllabus acknowledgement quiz, which is what I was really trying to stress. So thank you guys so much for doing that. But let's go ahead and get kind of into the meat of things. Let's hold off on the bouncing balls right now. Let me get back to kind of what we were, where we left off on Tuesday. So, before I could get to it, I know we had talked about the graphs, the graph editor and whatnot. We had, we didn't get a chance to talk about importing assets. Now, what are assets, right? Assets are things, that you use inside of the program. Anything that you're going to like import in there. Images, videos, even PDF files. Those kind of things are assets, right? Audio files. You're going to import a lot of them. After Effects accepts a lot of different types of files. Can you guys see the screen okay? Can you guys see all of After Effects? Let me move myself. It's kind of hard. I'm going to move myself down here for now. Let me see. Yeah, if you guys can see in After Effects, if you can see all of After Effects, okay, just let me know. And if you guys have issues, let me know. I can see the chat this week, so I can interact with you guys. So if you have questions, just ask them. But getting back to this, After Effects, you can import a lot of things into here. You can image files, so like JPEGs, PNGs, TIFFs, things like that. You can Adobe products, so like Illustrator, Photoshop. You can do, I think you can do InDesign. You can even put in here PDFs, which I've used before. All sorts of things. They all have different file extensions. They're all, but there's all one way to get them in here, right? And the main way to get things into After Effects is over here in the project panel. What you're going to want to do, the proper way to import something into After Effects is to right click in any of the blank space of the project panel, go to import and then file. And then what it'll do is it'll open up your file navigation to go through here and find whatever files you have. I have a couple saved up. Let me show you guys. Actually, I think it's on my desktop. Okay, cool. So I changed, let me go back real quick. This used to say day one. I updated the name on here to say Introduction to After Effects. It's just a little bit more of a descriptive title for me. And what I did is I saved some images from online. I went through today and got some stuff prepared for you guys to show you how to import them into here. So like, let's bring in this JPEG of the deep ocean, right? So I'm going to hit import and it's going to show up here within my project panel. Generally, what I like to do is I like to create a new folder and rename it images, especially if I'm going to have a lot of photos in there. And I'll just drag and drop that right into the image folder that I have right up in here. Keeping this area nice and tidy is going to be very helpful, especially if you pass projects off to coworkers or anything. Like having the little folders in here, that's really important. In my opinion, you might not agree and you might have it look very chaotic, and that's fine, but it might be hard to navigate at some point. Anyway, so we're going to open that folder up and we're going to take this, and you can either just drag and drop it onto the composition, or you can drag it and drop it right onto your stage. And it appears right there. And notice the layers right on top of the image layer is on top of all of the layers of the shapes that we created last class. And if I just pick this and drag it around, it works the same as like a solid layer or a shape layer within After Effects. So you're going to have the same transform properties, right? You're going to have, you hit P, you have position, T for opacity, S for scale, R for rotation. And you can use them the same. Like if I were to want to rotate this image, I could do so. And you notice you have the stopwatch here on the side as well, which means you can keyframe these properties. So let's say I want to scale it, right? I want to make it big. It is not the size. It is not the standard size that we are working in. I turned it. Yeah, it takes a while. It takes a while to learn to be really tidy in your programs, and it'll evolve over time, and you'll find kind of what works best for you and your best organization styles. But I did, like I said last class, I linked, there's a video on the front of my YouTube that talks about file structure, and it's a great one to watch. And that one helps you throughout, because that's what we use standard right now, at least where I work in the marketing company. So the thing that's great about you got the JPEG in here. Let me see, where did I leave off? You can add video in here as well. Like, let me try and find a video real quick that you can put on your timeline. I think I actually have some in my personal Dropbox. Just, yeah, I'll drag and drop that here. Okay, what I just did is I dragged it from the folder and dropped it in here. I did that for the sake of time, I think, more or less. It's not a good habit to necessarily use all the time with image sequences. Don't do it with images. The video's not that big of a problem, but I'll kind of touch a little bit more later on why image sequences, doing that is a bad idea. But notice that, like, I brought the file onto the timeline here, and as soon as I hit play, it'll play the video, just like a normal video. This video happens to be longer than the 5 seconds that I have on my timeline. So if I were to pull it this way, notice the video just keeps going and going. It's, it's quite a long video here, so it extends quite a bit further than the 5 seconds. So you can always, drop the videos in there. Let's drag this down below everything. Kind of making stuff a little chaotic right now, so I'll just bring that there. The one thing that you can see with dropping these files in is you can see the actual information about the file. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this panel bigger. In fact, you can do this if you want and extend your panels out, especially if you have a laptop, learning to kind of manage how large things are. That's going to have to happen on and off, and you'll adjust that like throughout your day even. But if you want to see something in full view and you want to see it as large as you can, you hover over that specific panel, or you click on that panel and you hit the tilde key. And what it does is it extends that panel out to a full frame, and as soon as you hit it again, it goes back. The tilde key is the one that's in the upper left corner below the escape key on your keyboard. It looks like the little, kind of like the little wave symbol there. But yeah, if you hit that, and it works with all panels, so I could do it with my timeline as well. Back to the stage, back to the project. If I go to my effects, if I had effects in there, you could make those bigger too. So when you're working with limited screen space, that's a great shortcut to know. But back to the footage. So I dragged and dropped the movie file here into After Effects. What's nice is you can see what type of movie file it is, right? The extension on here is .mov, which means it's a QuickTime movie. And you can actually see right up here, you can see the frame rate. So you know, that's an important thing when you're dragging videos and stuff onto into your project, to be able to instantly see what kind of frame rate you're working with, especially if you don't know right away. Let me see here. Yeah, we can save it. And it closed it out. My computer's been acting a little weird today, you guys, so I apologize. Let's open that back up. Now, I'm going to talk about, go back to images for a second here. There's different kind of image extensions that you see after a picture when you look it up, right? For instance, here I have a PNG, 2 PNGs, and a JPEG, right? There's many different types, like I was talking earlier. JPEGs, the biggest thing about these is they don't have a transparency channel. So JPEGs are just RGB, red, green, blue channels. There is no what we call an alpha channel, which is the transparency. Unlike in a PNG, PNGs are RGB plus the A for the alpha channel, which means you can have that transparency in the background. It's a little bit of a bigger file, but not by much, I would say. And in general, like that's a really good, it's a good fidelity to work at. Usually they're higher resolutions, they look good, and that way if you're wanting to export something to be able to composite it right into your scene, then you're gonna want, if you want like just the image without the background, you have to have a PNG. Now I'm going to show you kind of what that is like here. So again, if you want the image to, or whatever your asset you're bringing in, to go into a specific folder, if you highlight that folder and then hit Control I, which is the shortcut for import, it will automatically put that into that folder, your asset into the folder. So I'll click the bubble and I will hold down Shift and I'll select the cat as well. And then I'm going to hit import. And it brought them both in here, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to drag them onto the timeline. I picked an awesome picture of a cat. I thought you guys would enjoy that. I'd get a little giggle out of him because he looks like a little pirate, and I think that's cool. Yeah, and so I've got something really odd going on here. But the first thing that you notice, right, is that there is no background to the cat. It's just the cat. Even with this bubble here, the awesome thing about the bubble is not only is there transparency around the bubble, right, but through the bubble. So you can take this thing and move it around and you can see whatever is underneath it. So, you know, that's a very powerful tool when it comes to compositing and putting different assets over each other inside of After Effects. But that's, you know, that's something that we need to know, because especially in this class, we're always going to be exporting. If we export any kind of image sequence, it's always going to be a PNG. We always want to export things with an alpha layer and as a PNG. JPEGs are more of like a final render, something that you're going to output that's not really going to be brought into anywhere or composited with anything. I mean, it's not saying that you can't work with them, but just working with a higher resolution and a little bit of a bigger file, you know, it is a better option, especially when it comes to animation. Now, you know, that's the biggest thing, is we always want the best quality within our workflow. And workflow, like, really important, right? Saving our workflow, right? We've got all this stuff here. Thankfully, before the program closed out on me, I saved it, which was great because I didn't lose any of the work that I've started on so far. But hitting Control S, saving that, great, that's awesome. You know, but there's a little bit more that goes with this, especially when you have external assets to worry about. When you save in After Effects, it always saves, the file extension is always a .aep. I believe it'll show that here. Yeah, perfect. Right there, .aep. I saved it, right? But it doesn't actually, all of these external assets that I have put in here do not save with the project. So if I were to delete this folder, all of these external assets that came with my project would be gone. That's not good. Like, that's not good for your workflow. So how do we get around that, right? We want to essentially save our project file with the external assets somewhere. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to come up here, up at the top to File, and then we're going to click on File. And if you come down here, there's a little tab that says Dependencies. Now you're going to hover over that and hit Collect Files. Now when you do that, you want to collect source files, make sure it's collecting it for all of the compositions, right? You want it all of the comps. You don't want it to leave anything out. You don't have to have it reduce the project, but I believe it can be checked. I think that does. I'll have to double check, but what I believe reduce project means is it will take any of the external assets that you are not using within your compositions, and it'll just get rid of them, right? So if I didn't want this bubble PNG image to be in the composition and it's just taking space up in my project file, I can click on the reduce project and it'll get rid of all that stuff. So, you know, if you just want to keep things there just because, I would uncheck that. And then we're going to hit collect. And then we're going to pick a location for this to live. Again, I'll just kind of put it back where I had it. But we are, yeah, and we'll keep it in a test day 1 folder, right? So I'm going to hit save. And then what it's going to do is if I go to the main folder there, you know, here was my original file, but here is the folder that I just made. This could be anywhere. Like if I wanted to save this to my downloads or into a different, for example, onto your hard drive, you know, it would show up there. I just put it here for time's sake at the moment, but this can really live anywhere. Oh yeah, thanks. I like the pirate cat too in the ocean. I'm happy you appreciate that. Normally though, when you collect it, it should say, it should have a folder here that says footage. I'm not sure why. Let me see. Maybe it was because, let's redo this real quick. I just deleted that folder. File. A good chance for you guys to see it again. Dependencies, collect files. I'll recheck that. Reduce project. Generate report. File collected. We'll hit collect. This time I will save it to like my downloads. Let's see if it works there. Ah, there we go. So you do have to have that little check, that little box ticked in order for it to collect those images and put it into a folder. So I saved it to my downloads. If I open it up, it has a folder that says footage, and if I open that, it's got all of the assets, all of the external assets. So it's collected all of those and put everything into a folder together so it can't get away from each other. Because the issue is as soon as you were to move one of these out of the folder, right? Let's say I moved this and I dropped it into pictures, and then let's see here if it'll work on this one. If I close it out, and I go to, I drop that bubble picture into the photos file place, wherever location. So it's no longer in that footage, but it's still technically in the project, right? So if I go to that project that I just saved as a collected file, and I open it, you're going to see something. It's going to give me a warning that says that file is no longer there. And there's an issue. Right here, After Effects warning, one file is missing since you last saved this project. That's the problem with when you move assets around. That's why you always want to keep them together and keep things in the same file location. So let me show you how to fix this, okay? The first way to fix it is to not do it. We don't want to move them around. You can see it's always going to look like this, like old school TV when it goes and you know, there's no picture happening. It's going to give you this like image is a default, letting you know this is gone. It's no longer there. You can also see then in your project panel, it's the same. It's giving you that. It's telling you which specific file is not there. So what I want to do now is I can, if you've moved it purposefully, you can select the file and you right click and you can hit replace footage and hit file and then find that specific image again, which would be in my photos, I think. Let me see, picture, that's wrong. Pictures, it just moved it. Maybe I moved it to somewhere, I have no idea now. I don't want to, well, either way, I can always do this, right? Because I have it saved on my desktop as well. And you'll hit import and then it'll bring that image back in. But remember, just don't move the files. Always keep them with the project file specifically. Okay, now let's think here. Oh, okay, yeah, a good thing to talk about here. The timeline. It's getting rather cluttered, right? We're starting to get a lot of stuff in here, and there are actually memes online for motion designers and animators where they show their timeline and it's just stacked full of layers, right? It's just not, it's, you know, this is another organizational thing that's not only going to help you keep your timeline tidy and cleaned up, but it's also going to help you kind of group things, right? This is another way of essentially creating a folder or nesting your animated assets that are within After Effects on your timeline. So let's say this is great. It's getting rather cluttered and I want to keep all these images together. I want to put them in their own kind of file away so I can just clean this up. I'm going to select the ones that I want to do that. And I'm going to hit Shift Control C. This is called pre-composing. You'll hear people call it a pre-composition as well. You want to make sure the first thing that you do is rename this pre-composition. So what usually I like to do is I like to keep the word pre-comp in there so I know that it's a nested folder, right? Essentially that's what it is, or a nested composition. And I'm going to name this Images Pre-comp. You also want to make sure that Move All Attributes into the new composition is selected. If you don't select that, it's not going to move anything into that composition. And so we're going to hit OK. And then notice what it does. The images are still there, right? They're still in my stage, but I just took those layers and I put them together into an additional composition. And so if I double click this, all of them are there. The timeline is exactly the same. Nothing changes. When you pre-comp something, it takes the setting of the composition that you're working in, all of those comp settings, and it applies it to the pre-composition. I know I'm saying composition a lot in pre-comp. Bear with me. You know, if you're not understanding why I'm doing something, if you're like, why is she putting this here? Why is she doing that there? You know, ask. You know, I've got the chat up here. Ask in the chat. Ask your fellow classmates in Slack, and we'll explain it to you, because you never want to just do things, right? We always want to know why we're doing something, have a reason that we're doing something, an intention behind what we're doing. And so, I mean, this can go forever, right? Like, say I wanted to pre-comp the bubble in the ocean together, right? Because I wanted to, for some reason, do that. Shift Control C, which will do that. Or if you have the layers selected, you can right click and go to pre-compose. you'll click that and you'll get the same menu up here. And then I'll just say, I don't know, deep sea bubble. It's crazy. I don't know where my mind's going. It's been a long day. But see, now I have another pre-composition in there. And then if I open this up, same thing. And then if I move along, it's going to open them up in the order that you've opened them from, essentially. So if I want to go back here, it's the main image. But all of a sudden, right, the cat is gone. Why is that? Well, that's because the pre-composition of the deep sea and bubble that we made is on top of the layer with the cat. So the way we fix that is we take this cat layer and we just drag and drop it up above, and it's back in frame. Remember, layer order matters. So if something like that ever happens, you're like, why isn't it there again? Just take your time, go through it slow, look at the things and be like, okay, are the layers in order? Do I have anything stacked on top? You know, is the layer hidden, right? Is the little eyeball marked off? Those are kind of things you want to do to troubleshoot when you come into issues like that. The other thing that you're going to see is when I was making these pre-compositions, they were showing up as well inside of my project panel. You're going to get this a lot. You're going to end up pre-composing things a lot. For some reason, After Effects has these weird bugs and issues that you'll come into sometimes, and sometimes the answer is just to pre-compose. It is an anomaly. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. Just some things work better that way. Is like putting it into a folder and then letting it do its thing that way. It's like a little hack to get around some kind of issues. The other thing that's nice about pre-compositions, right? So we've got the bubbles in the ocean in this one, got the cat, and then the other pre-comp in this one. And then here's our main composition with everything, right? You can add effects to pre-comps or any kind of composition, and it will affect all of the layers and pre-compositions that are nested within it, right? So if I wanted a blur, let's say we're going to do a blur, right? I'm going to come over here. This is what was hidden last time for you guys. You can see, of course, you're going to do that now. Let me see if I can do it. Here we go. This section right here. This area is what was hidden from you last time. Again, I apologize. I didn't realize that the screen wasn't fully showing there. I know that my head is kind of, let me just move this real quick, see if I can do that. I'm going to zoom there so you guys can see a little bit better. Okay. Shoot, I'll zoom in again. Over here you have the panel, the main panel, right? And then you have a bunch of different like sub panels within it. This is where you're going to get your characters for any kind of text you're going to use. You can edit that text like paragraphs, like aligning the paragraphs, center alignment, right alignment. We'll talk about this a little bit more later. Another things that you can do, align things. Let me see here. Aligning things to your composition, right? Like if I wanted something, this bubble, let's say I wanted that centered in the middle of the composition, I would hit this one and it would both center align it horizontally and vertically. I'll show you a little bit more. We'll use that later. But over here is your effects and presets. And this is the one that I was telling you has the massive list of stuff. It would take you years to go through this. Because inside each one is more folders and then more folders on top of it. So you just really want to search, right? So we're going to add the effect to this one. We're going to add something called Gaussian blur. It's like a standard blur that motion designers and we use to like just add a blur onto images or to like video and stuff. So I went I grabbed it and I dragged it over here and dropped it onto the layer. You can also drop it here into the effects and controls panel. It'll do that. Or if you know it's going to be on the entire thing, you can drag and drop it right onto the stage. But I'm just going to delete this here. We don't need two of them. And then I'm going to increase the blurriness, and you're going to see that it affects every layer, even though they're all nested and sub-nested. And then if I were to go into each pre-comp, right, it's not blurry because it's not on any of these layers inside. It's on the main layer, the main folder, the main pre-comp, which is nice because then any changes, right, that I make to here, like let's say if I rotate this cat 180 degrees and then I go back to the main folder, it's made all those changes. So the changes, you know, they stack down. Whatever you do in each pre-comp will change all the way up to the top. One of the ways you can see your pre-compositions, let's just undo that and let me remove the blur from here because I like our little pirate cat. We can name him Matey. I like that name. So one of the things that you can do, like there's a button that you can see kind of the mapping system of your pre-compositions, and that button is right here. And it does nothing but just kind of show you the mapping of your pre-comp. So if I click it, it shows that right now I'm in the main test folder, right? But if I click here, it'll bring me over to the image pre-comp. If I click on that thing again, it's going to show me kind of how each of these pre-compositions work. You can't really drag things and move them around. They didn't make it that intuitive or anything, but it's a great way to see, like, if you've got a lot of things pre-composed in your compositions and stuff. It's a great way just to kind of get your bearings and figure out where you're at. Let me see here. Do we have any questions so far in the chat? I'm not sure how many of you guys are with me. I've only got a few of you today, but that's okay. We'll party with a few of us. Remember, each pre-composition has its own timeline. Any changes made within the pre-comp will update within the other compositions. It's super common. So, let's move to the next thing. I'm going to recap a little bit kind of about what we spoke about last week or last class, and then kind of what we learned today. In fact, let me do a little cleanup here because it's bugging me. So I'm going to make another folder, and I'm going to name this folder comps. And I'm going to take all of these, and I'm going to drag all the compositions that are in my project panel into there. And then I'll take another one, and I'm going to name it video. And I'm going to take that and drag that there. And this just looks much cleaner. It looks nicer. You can always have a main folder that just says assets, where you can drop all your videos and images or whatever else you have in there. But let's go ahead and recap a little bit. Oh, text. Okay, so the first thing that you do, you open up After Effects, you're going to create a comp. You're going to name it. You're going to then import assets or create shape layers. By the way, this tool that I use is called Zoom It, where I can notate on the screen. I love it. I'm still trying to get a handle of it, so bear with me while I kind of learn it a little bit more. Then we're going to composite them, and then we can animate, right? Essentially, we'll move the object, right? Let's get out of here. Remember how to animate. We're gonna, let me bring this down below everything. We'll do it with the purple ball. I will hide the blue one for clutter's sake of everything on there. And we'll do the position again, right? toggle the stopwatch, move the playhead in time, change the value, right? Move the playhead in time, change the value. You can even drag if you don't want to do anything like a straight line, right? Move the playhead, change the value. Sorry, I accidentally clicked there. And then hit space bar and it'll move it. And essentially that's how we animate, right? All right, let me pause this here. Save my file, right? Control S. A few things to mention before we get into our next topic here. In the beginning of class, I will do my best to go step by step and be as detailed as I can about what I'm doing and explaining why I'm doing things. But as class progresses on, I'll start veering away kind of from the step by step instructing, and I'm going to move you guys more into like I'm going to start directing you more at like an artistic level, right? I'm going to let you know, hey, maybe things could look a certain way. You're going to want to center things, you know, different kinds of feedback like that versus telling you move the playhead here, click here, move the playhead here, click here. Again, if you have any questions when watching the videos or playbacks or working alongside with me, if you have questions, especially if they're like why, right? Ask those questions. Why did we do the thing we did? I mean, or like we did this thing, but I don't know why we did it. Ask that. Like I said earlier, we want things to be intentional. Now, I'll repeat again. I also work a full-time job at a marketing company as a senior animator and editor. Outside of this, I work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I do use Slack. I will try and talk to you guys on Slack, but some days I'm very busy and I won't have the ability to do that or to answer your questions all the time right away. Because of that, though, we have a tutor. Her name's Belle, and she tutors both in person and online. She tutors for animation classes, so please utilize her if you need help. She's awesome. She's a GCC alumni. She just graduated last year. Her hours this semester are Mondays and Wednesdays from 11:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and that's a hybrid on Monday and Wednesday. So she's not only tutoring in person in the lab, but also online. And also she does online only on Tuesdays and Sundays from 2 to 6:30. So I would utilize that. Belle's really awesome. She's very, very nice. And she's patient and she does a really good job explaining things. And so use that, you know. That's why we come to class and go to school and get help, because there are going to be questions that you guys have. Another thing, if you have certain questions about stuff, or like modules or the assignment, when it comes to deliverables, i.e. what you're turning in, read everything. Read that entire module from the top to the bottom. Take your time going through it. You know, you don't want to miss things. In the real world, if you go and you turn something in and you're missing a bunch of stuff, that becomes a problem if it happens over and over and over time. Make sure that you're turning in what I'm asking you to turn in, right? And make sure you're looking through those, because there's a lot of you're also seeing a lot of tutorials that have been taught from Casey Farina, who's the director of the program, and he used to teach this class before I took it over. And so a lot of the modules will have links to his videos in there as well. So in case I don't get to something some week, like today, we might not get to all of the steps or processes of animating the project we're going to work on this week. And so in that module, though, there are videos that are going to show you more of the step-by-steps. So if I don't get to it, I'll let you guys know, and I will link to a video, or I will create like another recording at some point, because I also don't want to, you know, I want to be respectful of your guys' time as well, and I don't want to, you know, overstep that. I'm trying my best to keep things within a certain time frame, so I will work hard at honing that in the further we get into the semester. But I do have a couple questions for you guys. I know there's a few of you online, and so since there's a couple of you online, I'm going to ask these and you can just answer them when you hear it. But, you know, what kind of frame rate are we going to be working with this semester? You know, we learned that on Tuesday. Also, what's the resolution that we're going to be working at this semester? And then my final question are, what colors are the different coordinates? We talked about that, right? It's standard across all programs. The X, Y, and Z values are different colors. If you guys can remember those and answer them, I mean, that's awesome. I'll be excited to hear that. Someone's listening, yeah. Okay. So, while I am waiting for that, I'm going to switch to something else real quick. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to kind of close it out real quick. Close this. Move this over here. All right, so let me make this bigger. Bouncing balls, yeah, our first project. Time to get our hands dirty. We are going to be animating 3 balls in 3 different programs. We're going to be creating essentially this. We're going to be making a 2D ball in Adobe Animate using frame by frame animation. So essentially drawing that out. We're going to be doing a 2D ball in After Effects using keyframe animation, which you guys have just learned about. And then we're also going to be making a 3D ball in Cinema 4D using keyframe animation as well. We're going to probably start, I'll probably have you guys start with the 3D, and then we'll move to the Adobe Animate, and then if we have time, we'll get here to the After Effects one. But go ahead, I want you guys to go through and read this section. Let me see here. I want you guys to make sure you're reading this section right here. And I also, ooh, that went crazy. I want you to definitely check out this LinkedIn Learning. You have got to watch this. This is really important. This is why we wanted you guys to get all signed up for LinkedIn Learning and get ready, because this video is going to teach you about the foundations of animation, your animation principles, right? There are 12 of them. We will talk a little bit more about them next, I think next week, but, and today we're going to exhibit 2 of them, but these are the animation foundations and principles. You have got to know them in order to animate, right? There's certain ways that things move and how things move, and this really breaks that down for you and explains the different things that we look at when we go to animate and what makes animations look good and what sells them as motion, right? You know, these bouncing balls, they're bouncing, yeah, but like we did things to it to make it look like it's actually bouncing. It's not just like boop, 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 boop. It, you know, it goes doot, doot. It's got, you know, it's got gravity, right? It looks like it has gravity. It's doing something. We'll talk about it here in a second. I want to get to a couple more things first. But right down here is a great, this is a great chart that represents kind of your workflow and how we're going to be working through this process. We're going to start here where we're creating the 3D ball in Cinema 4D. And then we're going to export that out as a PNG sequence. If I don't, just cover that up with drawing. But we're going to export it out as a PNG sequence. And then we're going to bring that PNG sequence into After Effects where we're going to composite it. And then we're going to stack some more things on it until we can output it, right? Same with a frame by frame animation. We're going to create that in Animate. We're going to create, we actually don't have to make a PNG sequence for that. We can just import the actual Adobe Animate file, which is really nice. It's a little bit quicker that way. And then we'll make one in After Effects. And then we bring all those into After Effects again, or leave it in After Effects, and we composite it together. We put it all together, right? We'll add titles at some point, and then we're going to export it out and have our final render there. So if I do not get to all of the techniques today in class, you guys will want to watch these right here, these videos, specifically these videos. And these just will break down what I'm going to teach you as well. But they're just Dr. Farina's videos. Again, we'll try and get through some of them here kind of quick. I'm trying to move quick, so if I go too fast, just let me know. But what's nice is we have some templates to start out with, right? We have one there. That's for the After Effects. So you want to click on that and download it. We also have a Cinema 4D one here that you can download. We do not have one for the Animate. I'll show you guys how to set up that project right away. But these are all set up for you so that you guys don't have to do all that legwork right away, which is nice, so that you guys can kind of get right into animating and not have to worry about, am I setting this up right? What doesn't look right? So, you know, we'll be breaking that down a little bit more later. But then again, to recap, let's not do that. Let's do this. Recap. Creating, if I can spell, the balls. Then we're going to be compositing them together in After Effects. AE is After Effects. Then we're going to send it to Media Encoder, which is essentially like a rendering program specifically to Adobe. And then we're going to output, I can't spell, our deliverables, right? We're going to get those ready to show to everyone in class. Let me just get out of here. These are going to be your deliverables right here. It will tell you the criteria for them and what I'm expecting to see in all of those things. How it needs to be formatted, how it needs to be rendered out, the design, like information about the design and the color palette. Also here in every module at the end of the module, you will see the deliverables. This is really important. This is what I'm telling you to check, double check, triple check to make sure that you are handing in things the correct way. I might have to, because I've had a little bit of issues and we're a little constrained on time. I have you guys having this project due on the 23rd, I believe it is. I believe that's Monday by end of day. Yeah, Monday end of day here. Try and get them in by then so that we can look at them in class and we can talk about them and, you know, see how everyone's doing and where everyone's at. I'm not going to close the project. Like I said, if you can just communicate with me if there's any issues or anything. But let's try and keep these deadlines, right? Let's try and stay focused on this class and get into these projects and get them done, because the more you fall behind, the harder this is going to be to maintain, you know, the projects in the class. Now, a couple things we're going to go ahead and I'm going to make that small. I'm going to go over here. I have already pre-downloaded the templates for today, including the Cinema 4D template. That's the one we're going to open up first. We're going to start here. Now, I did something here so that you guys can see, because I've had some questions right now about the licensing in Cinema 4D. When you're looking at the technology login challenge, it tells you to watch that video, but make sure you're stopping at the time that it tells you above the video, right? Before you click on the video, there's like a little note that's in red and it tells you don't watch past this time. Because if you do, you'll get a little bit confused and it'll talk about more codes and we don't have to worry about that, right? We just go up until when we actually purchase the promo and the essentially code or whatever for Maxon. And then you're going to download this, which is the Maxon app here, and it manages all your programs, right? It's got all of the Maxon programs in here, including Redshift. There's no actual license key that you have to put in there, which is nice, but this always pops up, right? The problem is, you know, with After Effects and the Adobe products, like I was saying, everything's transferable, which is still true, but with Adobe, you can have the software on different machines, whereas with the Maxon products, with Cinema 4D specifically, it only allows you to have it on one machine at a time. It doesn't mean you can't transfer it to another. For example, right now it's licensed on my laptop, which I am not on at the moment. I'm currently on my desktop. So you have to click it to activate, and what it's going to do, you'll hit manage license. It's going to tell you you've exceeded your amount that that you can have the software on, right? And then it's going to take you to the login page for maxon.net, which is the main website. And then I've signed in here. I just want to be able to bring it in and show you. And then it shows you which device you're on, right? It brought me under the licenses right away. That's where you want to click just in case. If you got it in your profile, you want to go to licenses. And it tells me that I have it on my laptop right now. And I'm going to release it. And what that means, you'll hit yes. And that just means that it took the license off of the one computer. It doesn't remove the software. It just inactivates that license on that computer. You don't have to go through and purchase it again. All you do is you come back to this screen right here and you click to activate the license, and it'll do it for you within the app. Okay, that's really important. Don't go through the process again. It'll do it in the app. It always, for some reason, says you only have 14 days. It's not true. You have 6 months with it. Inside of your Adobe, I don't know where it went anymore, but inside of your Adobe like account online, it'll tell you when everything expires in there. So the 14 days isn't true, but I'll hit OK here, and now it's going to open up my project file, and this is the project file that I saved from the module. It is from Cinema 4D version R26, which I believe was last year's. Right now they're not doing, it doesn't have like an R, it's not R27 anymore. For some reason it's just Cinema 4D 2023. Okay. It should work in there. If you have problems or anything, or if you open it up and it's an older version, the layout might look different, but essentially it's very similar. I would try and keep up to date with this program so that you don't have any issues, because they did just have a recent rehaul of like the user interface in here. It looks a lot nicer, but let's get to the 3D, right? Cinema 4D. Ta-da! This is Cinema 4D. What you're seeing here is you're seeing the stage, essentially what you would see in After Effects as well. Also the viewport, I'll call it that too. I'll be fluid in between those. These are it didn't open up my materials folder here, but I'll show you that in just a second. These are just your objects that you have within your scene or your stage. This is what we'll be working with. You don't have to do anything. Everything's all set up for you guys in this. You're going to see that you've got the ball here, and then you've got all this other stuff up here. Look at it. Check it out. Unscroll things, but do not mess with them. Really don't you can just look at it and see kind of what it does, but these have all been set up for you guys for a reason. So don't You don't really want to mess with these settings, or you can mess up essentially like your render and the way things look in your output. These right here are called protection tags. This is basically mean it's got the layer locked, right? So we did that for a reason, so that you guys can't get your little fingers all excited and go in here messing stuff up. But as far as the right here, this is our object. This is what we want to be moving. Just the ball, essentially, in here. This is your objects panel. Right here. Up here. Let me do this. Undo that. Undo that. Let's escape. Right up here. In this tiny little corner here. This is essentially your materials. It's like it opens your materials up. It's like your materials panel essentially. And so when I click that, it just shows me that, oh look, right here I already have materials made for me. We've got those all ready for you guys to go. Now when you're working in 3D, there's like a difference of what you're going to see in the editor view or in the stage, right? Versus what you actually see in the render view. What do I mean by that? Well, in After Effects, when you're looking at your stage, you're seeing exactly what you're going to see when you output the video or render the video. It's going to look exactly like that. When I threw that picture of the cat up there, it's going to render the picture of the cat the way it looks in the computer at the moment. What you see here is essentially, how do I want to say it? It's like it's kind of like the wireframing, or like it's just showing you the geometry. Because here, let me just show you guys an example. If I hit Control R, it's going to bring up my render view, right? It looks different. It looks like it's almost made out of clay, right? Well, there's different things going on here. We all of a sudden have lighting happening. We have a camera here, we have a key light, a fill light, and those all are things that you can see if you hit Control R. Let me just do that real quick. Control or Command, if you're on a Mac, plus R is to do render view, right? And you'll hit that. You'll hit that again to go back, or you'll hit Escape. I'm sorry. You hit Escape to go back to kind of just your editor view, right? In the editor view, the reason it doesn't look like that all the time is because it takes a lot of computing power to make it look like that. I mean, you've got the camera, you've got a key light, you've got a fill light, you've got a target light. There's a lot of things happening in that. And for your computer to consistently be like rendering that out while you're working, and the more things you add into that, the less it's going to run well in real time. It's going to be, it's going to bog your computer down, and it's going to want to just kind of crash. And so that is why we work in the editor view. It's always going to come up like that. It's never really going to just show up in the render view. You always have to hover over the editor view, the stage, and hit Control R in order for it to do that. But what's nice about that, right, is if you're doing some work, let's say I want to drop a material onto the ball, right? Like I want the ball, let's make the ball striped. We'll grab that material and drag it down, and then we'll make the platform the purple. Grab it and drag it, and I hit the Control R, and then all of a sudden, I get to see what it looks like when I'm going to render it out. Versus here, it doesn't look like that, right? You kind of see a little bit of highlights here from the lights. You can kind of see the reflection, some of the highlights off there, but it doesn't look as like detailed as this view does. A couple things you'll notice when I did that, I got up here, it like added those materials that I just dragged onto it right here, right? It added it to the stage, added that purple to the platform, to the stage, and then I added the ball texture to the sphere here. Now, what is the difference of this, right? These are tags. Anything that goes, let me back out of that. anything on this side of your layers, the objects, these are called tags, right? These right here, I believe, are target tags. And these right here are material tags. If you want to change the materials, right? Let's say I wanted the stage to be striped and the ball to be purple. Do not delete the materials within the material panel. It will delete the material entirely. You delete the tags from the object. So I'll just select it and delete, and then I can drag the purple to the ball and the stripe to the platform, and then when I hit Control R, it swaps it around. So because a lot of students like to work with textures and stuff right away, that is a whole ballpark that we'll kind of touch on in this class. It's a little bit more advanced for a couple other 3D classes that you guys will be in a little later on. But you need to know that so you don't just start deleting actual materials that you've worked hard to make. Let me see here. When you put things onto these objects, let me backtrack a little bit. These objects, essentially it's geometry, right? It's not, it has both an X value, it has a Y value, but it also has value on the Z axis, right? In Z space. And so there's, you know, it's like wrapping, it's essentially like wrapping a gift, right? When you put a material on something, you're essentially in 3D, the object you're working with, it has a mesh and materials that wrap around that mesh. So when I do drop this in there, it's essentially just the material wrapping around the ball. Versus in 2D, where you just kind of drop an image into the viewport or onto your stage, and it just is what it is, and it appears like that, right? Materials can, like I said, get really tricky. They can get really heavy. We'll leave, let's leave this one. Let's do this. I liked it when the ball was striped. Let's drop that back on there. Drop this back onto our platform. Let me see. Okay. Back up to the object panel up here. Something you guys need to know. Why does it say ball here and sphere here, right? Which one am I going to be using? Which one am I going to be selecting and touching to animate, right? You don't want to use the sphere. You want to animate the ball. Reason being is the sphere is your actual geometry, and the ball is this is what we call a null. Nulls are in both After Effects and Cinema 4D, and essentially what a null is it's a blank access point that you can use to control the movement of an object. So it's like just kind of like, it's like the steering wheel to the car, right? We wanted the ball to be within the null, and the reason being is if we later wanted to add things to this, we could just drop it into this null, and it would also animate with that, right? We want to, essentially it's kind of like pre-composing, right? And we renamed it to ball, so it doesn't just say null on there. But they're both used in After Effects. You know, it's important when we want to animate. Here, let me show you exact reason why. When I select the sphere, the anchor point, which is, remember, the center point that all the animation happens around. The anchor point, when I select the sphere, is in the middle of the ball here. We don't want that because the way we want to control the ball is actually from the bottom of it. when we're animating. And so when I select the null layer up at the top here, the anchor point is down at the bottom here of the ball. It's just in a better position for when we're adding the bounce and the squish, the squash and the stretch, versus like if you're to squash and stretch things from the center point of the ball, it can get a little bit wonky and kind of weird. And so for this instance, we move the layer, the anchor point down to the bottom, and we will only be touching the null. And because of that, what I'm going to do is I am just going to, let me zoom in here so you guys can see. I just basically furled up that, essentially it was like a folder, right? Because before it was unfurled, and then we just furl it up. Just click that little minus, that little tiny little, let me see here, this tiny little thing right there. You want it to show a plus because that means that it's all folded up. If it shows a minus, that means it's everything within that null or that folder is displayed within your object panel. All right, some shortcuts. Let's learn some shortcuts here about moving objects and transforming objects. Get the type tool up. Okay. E equals the move tool. You will see that it is the move tool because there are arrows here and arrows here. And there's even a little arrow here, even though it doesn't look like it's because it's facing us directly. So that is E as an elephant. Let's see here. The next one is R. And that is for rotation, just like it sounds. And then T, which is for scaling. Dang, I can't type today. And then I'll just put E on here again as your move tool. So you guys can write that down. That's a good one to go into your glossary. Now, as soon as I hit these to change them, you'll see what's going to happen here to the access points on the anchor point. Like I'll hit, right now I'm in the move tool. I'm going to hit R for rotation. And all of a sudden, it's like an orbital gyroscope type shape, right? Like to sit here and grab, all of a sudden I'm rotating the x-axis here and rotating the y and rotating the z-axis. Let's go back. Okay. And then if I hit T, I gotta select, you have to select your object first. T, all of a sudden, these show up as little tiny boxes instead of like cones or triangles. And that means that you're in the scaling tool. So then as soon as I start to grab those, I can make the ball bigger or smaller. We're not going to work with the rotation or the scaling today. We're really just going to work with the move tool. And so you want to select your null object, the ball null. The ball null. I'm just going to call it the ball from now on, okay, guys? And then you're going to hit E for the move tool. Select that. E, we're in the move. Okay. A couple things that we have here, right? So we've learned the shortcuts for the transform property. But now where are those, where's basically like the coordinates for the transform property, or the like the numbers and the values, right? Let me move this out of the way real quick so you guys can see. Program's a little bit different here. All right, so we've got the ball selected. We've got it in to the move tool. Now if we go over here and we click on coordinates, then all of a sudden you can see that we actually have the coordinates. It gets kind of funny when I'm over in this area. but over here is where your coordinates are. Notice with your transform properties, there is an extra number in here, right? Because no longer are we just working in the X or the Y, but we have Z space. In After Effects, you can work in Z space. You have to toggle on your 3D, but it's not native. It's not that amazing, to be honest. But in Cinema 4D, this is native, right? It's a 3D program. In fact, we have rotations in different on different access points. We have, you know, X, Y, Z essentially there, and the same with the scaling. So you can scale not only in your Y space, but your X space and your Z space. Let me see. This is essentially right here. This is called your attributes panel. So you want to make sure that that is open for when you guys start the project. Everything should be set so far when you open the template, so you shouldn't really have to worry too much about that. Let me see here. How's everyone following along in the live stream? Are we understanding it pretty well so far? All right, just let me know. So I will move towards the bottom here. This is our timeline. Right over here, and it goes all the way to the other end where you guys can't see, but that is our timeline. Right here is our playhead. We have our play buttons. Let me see here. We have our play buttons at the bottom, our rewind, our move forward a keyframe, or back a keyframe. Let me see here. The timeline in Cinema 4D is very similar to what you guys have in After Effects, right? Essentially, it's going to be the same concept. It's keyframe animation. So you're going to move the playhead, make a keyframe. Move the playhead, change the value, and make a keyframe. Move the playhead, change the value, make a keyframe. There is a little bit of a difference here in Cinema 4D versus After Effects. After Effects records keyframes automatically if you move it on the if you move the playhead on the timeline. So if I were to make a keyframe here in After Effects, it would be there. If I were to make a keyframe here, or if I were to move my playhead here in After Effects and move my ball, it would automatically make a keyframe. It's not the same in Cinema 4D. It's a little bit different. So how do you set a keyframe, right? Keyframes are these tiny little diamonds that are right here, and right here. It is a lot of info. It is a lot of information to take in. It is very exciting. It's fun to use. All these programs are really dense, so that's why it takes a lot of classes over a few semesters to figure it out. And I'll tell you guys that you will constantly be learning, right? I'm constantly learning about all of the programs that I work in all the time, especially because they're always updating things. So, you know, it's new things all the time, learning different techniques all the time. But you'll get the gist of it here within a couple weeks. You guys will be more familiar and more comfortable. Anyways, we'll get back to this. So the keyframes are next to all the transform properties. They're all these little diamonds. Let's say we're going to start. Let's move this ball up. So I just grabbed the Y value, the transform property, and I moved it up. And you notice that when I move this, the numbers over here in your attributes panel start to change under your Y coordinate, right? So if I want that, let's say I want an even number because I like even numbers. I'm going to put it at 600. And then I'm going to click this button. This is essentially your record button. It has recorded a keyframe. The way you know that it's recorded a keyframe down at the bottom is you see this little gray bar all of a sudden appears. You also see that this turns red. The keyframe, of course, I'm going to do that, but the keyframe turns red and the little property turns yellow. Now, we're gonna go to, let me see here, just look at my notes real quick. All right. So I'm going to move this. I'm going to move the playhead all the way to 12, actually to 24, right in the middle here because we have 48 frames in our scene. And I am going to take the ball and I'm going to move it down. In fact, I'm going to put this back at 0, specifically 0. And then I am going to click to add another keyframe. It doesn't automatically make the keyframe when you change the value. You have to click this. If I were just to, like if I were to move this, change the value, move the playhead back to where I had here, it didn't record it, right? Right now it's still just that way. You'll run into making that error a couple times until you guys get used to it. It'll happen over and over. But let's go ahead and we're going to move the playhead down here to frame 48. And we are going to copy this first keyframe and paste it at the very end where I had the playhead before. You can do that by hitting Control and clicking and then dragging, if it's going to work. Come on. There you go. It'll turn yellow when you have it selected. So Control and click, and you drag it all the way to the key to the frame that you want the keyframe to be on. So if I scrub all the way back to the playhead, why did it do that? Let me see here. Example of why things go wrong. I think that select the ball. Coordinates are here. It recorded everything. I must have grabbed this incorrectly. So I'm going to Control Z and go back here. I'm going to expand my timeline a little bit so I have a little bit more room to work with. Your notebook's crying with all the notes. It's okay. Yeah, you'll be able to reference it. And like I said, you'll just get used to things. I'll repeat them throughout the class. Just one second here, you guys. Okay. All right, back to this. Okay, so I set a keyframe at the beginning. We set it up in the air. Then I went to 24 frames. I set another keyframe down at 0. The Y value is back down at 0. And one thing to notice is that we have these little markers right here, and there's actually one you guys can't see because it's hidden by the ball, but right down here. And just like in After Effects, these are your keyframes, right? These are the keyframes that I've set so far. The one at 0, the 0 frame, and the one at the 24 frame. Now these little marks in between, these little tiny ticks in between, those are automated keyframes, right? That's essentially an image of the ball on in space at a specific time. The power of that is the power of like not having to do that by hand is just awesome. So then I am going to click here. Let's try this again. Click, Control, drag. Let's see if it does it for me. Nice. Okay. And then I hit spacebar for playback, and we essentially have a bouncing ball, right? It looks like crap. It is going up and down. But it's not what we want, right? It's just essentially moving up and down. There's nothing spectacular about it. You know, this is a linear movement, right? Essentially, there is no slowing down or speeding up or anything that's happening in between it. So we're going to work on that a little bit more here in a second. But I want to mention something on why we wanted to make sure that this keyframe at the beginning and the keyframe at the end on the 48th frame are the same, right? We want the same position value at the end keyframe as at the beginning keyframe because we want to make something called a seamless loop. A seamless loop is movement, let me play it here, that has no gaps, it has no breaks in it, it continues without stopping, right? There is no, it's a constant movement, right? There is no glitching that's happening within the movement here. If our last keyframe were different than the first keyframe, you would have that glitch in the movement. It would just look like something was off. It wouldn't look seamless. In all the 3 balls that we're going to animate, we will only animate one bounce, and then we're going to loop it and repeat the animation. So it does all that work for us. We have to just do the one thing, make sure it looks great, and then we can just copy and paste it essentially, and it'll make it look like it's bouncing more than once. It'll be continuous and it will look seamless. Now back to the movement of it. Balls do not bounce like that. We need to add gravity essentially, right? We need to emulate gravity within this bounce that's happening. We need, when you bounce a ball, right, it accelerates towards the ground and decelerates when it goes back up. So it's like boom, boom, bounce, 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 right? It doesn't go bounce fast up, bounce fast. It's not opposite of that. If you're having like trouble knowing how movement is, or how certain things, how movement works and how physics works and stuff, I recommend doing the action on camera, looking online. There's tons of animation references that you can look online for, and you can watch that motion over and over and over again and start to understand what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and add that. We want to add that acceleration and deceleration to the ball. Kind of. Jessica, yeah, it would, we would want a little bit of squish when it hits the platform. Correct, yeah. The motion curve looks like exactly the opposite of what we'd want. Yes, kind of like, yeah, normally, I believe I think I know what you're saying, Brian. We'll demonstrate it here. So let me pause this. Let me pause the motion. We're going to go back to the first frame. We're going to scrub back there. We're going to select the ball again. And we are going to get back to we need to get back to the coordinates. And we're going to right click right here on the Y. And that's going to bring up this little panel. And we're going to go to animation. And then on this animation drop down, we're going to hit show F curve. This is essentially your graph editor view. Let's make it a little bit bigger here so we can see it. I'm going to drop the timeline down a little bit. It's a lot to look at. But I don't see anything here, right? And I see a bunch of motion. Why don't I see anything on this graph? That's because essentially like we're either pulled out of view or we're not far enough in. It's just not zoomed in correctly. And let me change this real quick. It's kind of I'm going to move myself up to here, the video up here, so that you guys can see the software a little bit better. Yes, squash and stretch are going to be our friend for sure. So we want to see this graph though, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to select the ball and you're going to hover over here with your mouse and you're going to hit H. And all of a sudden, we actually have the curve that's happening. This is the actual motion that is happening. As you see it, it's playing. It is slightly what we call eased. It's not exactly linear, but it still doesn't look good. So we have to manually change this to make it look good, right? If you guys know what color, I asked this earlier, but this line is a color. Which value does this represent? If you guys want to let it know in the chat. But you can see this is exactly the motion that is wrong with the ball just by looking at the curve, right? The curve is the speed of the ball over time. So we see that the curve kind of flattens out here in the middle. And we do not want that, right? That means the ball's not moving. When the curve is flat, the ball isn't moving anywhere. So we need to increase the slope, right? If we want it to go faster, we want the ball to move a shorter distance in a faster amount of time. Same over here. We want that ball to go up within a shorter distance at a faster amount of time. So the more we increase that slope, right? Like if I were to go like this, that is really fast over a short period of time. Here's your time. Here's the distance, you know. My drawing on there looks horrible. Just forgive me, please. But the more of an increase on a slope means the more distance you're covering over less time. Up and down is your distance on the graph. This is your distance. This is your time. So we are gonna click and drag. You don't want to just click here, and that goes for all of your programs. We don't want to just click on keyframes because more than likely what you'll do is you'll accidentally grab something else and you will move it, and we do not want that. So we're going to click off and we will drag over the keyframe, and you're going to notice that we have little Bezier handles, right? We want to break these Bezier handles. If I'm just going to grab this right now, you see that it's evenly kind of moving things as I curve it like that. We don't want that. We want to make this curve essentially look like a bouncing ball. And so what we're going to do is we're going to grab this, click, and we're going to hold down shift, and then we're going to move it like this to make a nice arch. And then we're going to, I'm just scrolling there, I'm sorry. I'm going to hit H again. And then I'm going to grab this one, hold down shift, and I'm going to bring that one up to look like an arch. And as you can see, it looks like an actual bounce. It looks like the bounce is going to go poof, hit the ground, and then move up. And now if I play it, poof, up, down, down. It's hovering a little bit for my, like a lot for my taste. Let me see if I can. You don't want to bring it up above this line. That's a good thing to mention, right? So you've got your value here. Mine's at 600. You do not want this curve going above the value, because then what happens is it's called overshoot. And you'll notice what happens is the ball hitches up at the top. It goes up real quick and then back down. You don't want that. So what I'm going to do is go back, and I am going to hit H again to bring that up. Let's select this. And then I'm going to kind of bring these back. I want it to just be a little bit, actually I want it to be less of a sharp angle there. That's not bad. It almost comes a little bit too much of a stop for me. Let me see if I can adjust this a little bit more. I do want a little bit of a sharper curve there. This is a lot of animation. Playing back, adjusting things, playing back and adjusting. There we go. This looks much better. Yeah, correct, Brian. X is red, Y is green, and Z is blue. Yeah. Yeah, see, this is called overshoot, right? Like, so, Jessica, you're saying you're wondering why it goes over like that. If it goes above your value here, that is called overshoot. that is something you're specifically going for in an animation. Like that would be an intentional thing you would add to an animation. You do not just want to like add overshoot for no, or have that in there for no reason, especially for a ball bounce, because nowhere ever would a ball go phew, 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 and then down. It just doesn't work like that. Essentially we have our ball bouncing right here, but let's go ahead and add, like Jessica was mentioning, some squishing to the platform, and like Brian mentioned, it's our one of our principles of animation, which is squash and stretch. What that's going to do is it's going to kind of give our ball some character, right? We've got the gravity in. Now let's add some life into the ball a little bit more. Let's make it look neat, right? So I'm going to Control S and hit save. Now, I should have probably done this in the first place because I tell you guys all to do this. But that's okay. We're doing it now. We just don't want to lose all of that work. It's going to tell you that this was made with a previous version. You're going to say, yes, you want to proceed. But then we're actually going to want to go up here. For you guys, you're going to want to go up to File, Save Project As. And you're going to want to do this with all of your template files, right? So I've got it as C4D ball template, but I want to put my name on this. So I'm going to put my last name, Makara _, and that is how I know that this is my actual project file and not the template. I did accidentally just save to the template. That's okay, but I need you guys to, when you are rendering things out and you are sending your files into to me, I need them to have your names on it. Nothing will make me more frustrated than having to open a bunch of C4D bouncing balls and not have you know, first of all, I shouldn't be receiving a Cinema 4D file. That is one thing, because I'll show you guys how we're going to export that shortly. But always have your name on a file. Never just send me a file without any kind of like detail of what it is and who it's for, because I won't know. So let's go ahead and add the squish. So we, you know, keyframe here at 0, keyframe at 24, value change. Keyframe at 48, same as the 0 frame, and then we went here and we adjusted our Bezier, we adjusted the curves, right? So now let's add the squash and stretch. So I'm going to take the playhead first, and I'm going to move it a few frames here before we hit the ground, right? In fact, I'm going to move it right there to the 20. And then I'm going to select the ball again up in the corner. I'm going to go over and I am going to ooh, that was wrong. Let's see here. I'm going to keyframe all 3 of the keyframes that are on the scale. We did not do that for the position because we're only moving in the Y position. We're not actually moving in the X or the Z. But with the squash and stretch, right, we are going to change all 3 values. So we also want to make our math easy here, right? Like you notice that all of the values are at 1. And so we're going to either decrease each value by 0.2 or we will increase it by 0.2. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the ball, before it's going to hit the ground, right, it's going to suck in. It's going to stretch out, right? Like we need it to, you know, it's kind of like an exaggeration, right? It's going to stretch before it hits the ground to smush. And then when it comes back up, it's going to stretch again. And so we are going to want to stretch it. We're going to want to, I think this one is, which one is this? 0.2. Let me see here. Okay, wrong. All right. You know what? We're going to do that. We're actually just going to keyframe this all at 1 at the first. Let's do that first. Oh, I did not want to select. I don't want all of these values selected. Let me see how I do that. How do I select off? Okay. Select the ball. This should be at 1. We're going to just toggle all of those. Let's undo that. Not sure why these are selected. There we go. Okay. I'm not sure why it did that. We just want the, all we want is the scale properties right now. So we're going to select and we're going to keyframe all three of those. And we're going to leave it at 1. And then we're going to go to the middle keyframe where the ball hits the ground, right? And we're going to decrease the Y. We want it to squash, right? We want it to smash into the ground. So we're going to decrease the Y by 0.2. So 1 minus 0.2 is 0.8. We're going to hit enter and we're going to keyframe that. Then we're going to hit, then when the ball goes like this, right, it's going to expand out in all directions. And so we want the X and the Y, or the X and the Z value to increase by 0.2 because we're squishing down on the Y and the X and the Z are going to expand essentially. So it's going to be 1 plus 0.2 is 1.2. 2. I'm going to tab down 1.2 and then we'll click on those to make sure it keyframes them. All right, 1, dropping down. And then we're going to come out here a little bit further. We're going to go back to the 1 values. Let me see here. 1, tab 1, tab 1. Click keyframe here. And then we're going to have a nice little squash. Plop. And a stretch back up. I didn't add the exaggerated stretch in there. The reason being it would be a little bit more complicated right now for you guys because you'd have to add additional keyframes to the timeline. And right now I just kind of want you guys to get the gist of the bounce and the acceleration and the deceleration and a little bit of the squish, right? Because we don't need a lot of the stretch in this 3D ball. In order to sell that it's hitting a platform and then it's squishing a little bit and coming back up. It's almost like a nice inflated ball, like a heavily inflated ball, almost like a basketball or something, but we're just exaggerating that a little bit. But it gives the feeling of like some kind of density, right? And especially when you're squashing or stretching something, you have to keep volume of the object in mind. You don't want to change the volume of the ball. And that'll apply a lot to when we move to Adobe Animate. But now let's go over to the keyframe, or to the, we're going to go over here to the graph. We're going to select these, the scale, and we're going to hit H again. And right here you see the X and the Y position. Even though we have the Z coordinate of the scale animated, right? We don't see the keyframe because, or we don't see the line here because the X line is covering it up. It's just over top of it because the two values are the same, right? And so I'm just going to adjust this a little bit more to make it a little bit more dramatic. I'm going to hold down Shift. Before you start moving stuff, like I said, let me show you guys here. Remember, don't just click, because remember, there are 3 keyframes in that one spot. There are 3 keyframes right there. It is not just one keyframe like it appears. There's 3 that are stacked on top of each other. And so what we want to do is we want to click and drag and select those keyframes, hold down Shift, select it, and then start to move it. In order to give it, I'm just going to make it so that the squash kind of happens a little bit closer to the platform, right? Just adjusting that a little bit. I can also hit H and come over here and maybe bring this in a little bit because I want it to go back to its original form a little quicker. So it's a little bit of a quicker squash and stretch back into its original position. But this is what we have. You know, here we have a fully fledged bouncing ball that has gravity and it has a little bit of exaggeration with the squash and stretch. So yeah, that's what we're going to do next. Is we want to export this out so that we can composite it into After Effects, right? We're still within that workflow. I'm going to try and move a little bit quicker here. I know you guys, it's a lot to take in and stuff, so let me see this. Oh, a quick note for you guys too. If you want to zoom in and out of the timeline in Cinema 4D or the F curve, it works for both. You just hit, you click and 2 zooms. So like, you can just move your mouse. You can scroll your mouse wheel or move your mouse around. But if you click in here and you hold down the number 2, and then you, here, let me see, click 2, and then you, come on, it was 2 and then click, opposite, sorry. Hit the number 2, and then you click, and then you can kind of stretch this or squash it out. And then if it gets all crazy and for some reason you can't see it, then you hit H again, and it brings you right back. Okay, so save your file. We are done right now. I'm going to hit Control S to save it. And now let's go ahead and start rendering. Oh yeah, something I write notes for a reason, you guys, so I remember to tell you things. One of the things that we want to set in Cinema 4D is an auto-save function. If you do not, I do not believe it is automatically on. So in order to go into auto-save, you're going to go up here to File. Let me move myself so that you guys can see. Brian, you're having trouble with the keyframing? It's not working when I apply the values. It applies throughout the whole animation. Okay. Let me know what you found out you were doing, because there's a lot of weird things that you can do. You can accidentally click things. Like I said, this program is really dense and there's a lot of weird stuff that can happen. But let me get back to this real quick. In order to autosave, you go to File. You go to Edit, and then you come down here to Preferences, right there. Then we're going to click that. So Edit, Preferences. You can also hit Control E. There was a shortcut that just popped up I didn't see. And then we're going to go down to Files, Autosave, and you're going to click this. You're going to toggle that little button on so that it's going to autosave for you every 5 minutes. This will save a lot of you. I'm pretty sure I wish I would have had that on before too. I am not sure. Like in the beginning, I was telling you guys about switching computers and switching the license. I'm not sure if it will save your preferences. So that might be something you guys want to get in the habit of going into the preferences in Cinema 4D and checking that. But again, Edit, Preferences, Files here, and then what was that? Oh, I went back. Well, Files there. Select it. And then save right there. And then you can change it. But every 5 minutes, I think of an autosave is a good thing. So that way, if it does crash, at least you've saved some of your stuff. So let's go ahead and render. You're not going to be dragging this file. Unlike Adobe Animate, you're not going to drag the C4D file into After Effects. It just can cause a lot of issues and doesn't work properly. And so we need to create a render. But what we want to do is we want to create an image sequence using those PNGs. So essentially sequential images, they will have different numbers at the end, but the same naming convention of different spots. Essentially, each one of these frames is going to be a different picture. So we're going to end up with 48 pictures. And so where you want to, the rendering happens up at the top right here.
I'm pretty satisfied with what I've got.
Oh, really, Siri? I don't know if you guys heard her, but she's listening to class right now. But the rendering stuff is right up here. The little icons are what you call a slate. It's what you see in like film when they say action. That little, that piece of board where they slam the thing down, that is called a slate. The one that we want to first start in here is the one with the little cog, the little settings icon. So you will click on that icon first, and it's going to bring up your render settings, right? Because the first thing we have to do is we have to adjust those. we want to make sure, thankfully this project, we have it set up for you guys. So the width and the height are already at 1920 by 1080. Resolution is at 72. We don't, sometimes you'll see 300 DPI or 300 resolution. That is for print. Do not use that for screens or for animation. You use 72 DPI for animation or for digital. If it's not going to print, don't go any higher than 72. It's pointless. It just makes a much bigger file that you don't need. Frame rate. We have the frame rate set to 24 frames a second. The one thing that here is different is the frame range, right? It is set to only render the current frame. We don't want that because then it's only going to export one image. We want it to export all of the frames, right? We want it to start at the 0 frame and export every single one throughout to the 48th frame. And so we're going to click that and we're going to select all frames, and then you'll see this value changes 0 to 48. You can use the current frame if you're like trying to render something out to show somebody, so you can get like approval on like a design choice or something. That way you don't have to render out the entire animation because they take a long time unless you have a heavy duty computer. 3D animation is, you will see. My computer might not take nearly as long as some computers, but that is why, this is the reason why people buy really big computers and spend a lot of money. So just make sure it's selected, the frame range is at all frames. We're going to go to save here, and then we're going to select our file destination. You'll click that little folder next to it, and then I've got my bounce here. I want to move outside of my template, right? I'm going to go to the bouncing ball folder that I have, and I am going to create a new folder. Do not just hit yes. Always create a folder for your PNG image sequences, and there is a reason for it, and it comes into factor when we import it into After Effects. Plus, you're going to have a ton of photos here. Can you imagine if it was longer than, if your animation was longer than 2 seconds? It would be a ton of images just all over the place on your computer. So best practices, create a new folder. We're going to name this 3D ball bounce, or bouncing ball PNG. So we know that it's the PNG sequence. We'll double click and select that, and we'll hit save. The format is a PNG. Let me see. The one thing, okay, sometimes that will not be checked. This is a huge thing. We have got to have the alpha channel checked because PNG sequences do not have to have an alpha channel. They can have an alpha channel, but it is not always like a requirement of a PNG. So you want to make sure that if that is not automatically checked, that you check that little box, because we want it to have a transparency. We don't want to see the background. All we want to see is the ball bouncing. So you will click that, and we're going to close this out. Now this has not rendered, right? This is not the render. We have just set the settings for the render. In order to actually render it, you need to come up to the slate icon that has the little play head in it, the little play button that looks like the YouTube logo, and you're going to click that, and then all of a sudden you're going to see it's working through. Hold on, let me see if I can move this. It is working through, and it is rendering out my animation. It looks a little glitchy and it looks a little weird, right? There's a lot of these little boxes that you see. Let me see if I can navigate there. If you grab this little square here and you pull down, you can navigate to see what it looks like, right? Mine's already done rendering. It already rendered all of those frames. But those little boxes that you were seeing appear, there were a bunch of little blue boxes. Those are essentially how many cores your computer has, right? That's or how many cores specifically your CPU, your central processing unit has. The more cores, the faster your render time, right? If you have 32 cores, you're going to have 32 of those little boxes on there rendering parts of the picture all at once. If you have 8, or or if you have 4 cores, I mean, good luck. It's going to take you a long time. But those are the reasons why animation times take so long. This explanation is like super simplified. There's way more that plays into render speed, but like, you know, if you check the settings of your computer and the specs of your computer and you notice that your CPU only has 4 cores or only a few more, you know, 8 seems to be pretty decent. But if you notice here, it'll tell you my computer, I believe, has 32. Let me see here. But it only took me a total of 18 seconds to render out 48 images, which is pretty fast. In fact, every single one of these will tell you how long it takes, but each one took less than a second long, and that's why it doesn't show anything within that little area. Let me move this out of the way. Yeah, I know. On a few, there's literally only 48 images for 2 seconds of animation. And now you can understand why drawing frame by frame, we cut that in half, right? Instead of 24 frames a second, we work with 12. And we're going to move into that here in just a second. But I'm going to close that out. I'm going to save this, Control S. And I'm going to close this out as well. Then I'm going to open the folder where I have that PNG sequence. And you guys will see what I was talking about. So all of a sudden I have a bunch of bouncing balls, and you can see that there's actually no, it shows the alpha channel right away. There is no background and is fully transparent. Now if I open up, if I go into, let me go ahead, and I'm going to open up an After Effects file. I'm going to save it to the bouncing ball. I'm going to show you guys what we're going to composite it into a scene, and I'll show you guys what I mean. What we'll do is we'll put a background behind it, right? So I'm opening a new After Effects project. I'm going to first save it, file, drop down to save as, and then I'm going to navigate to where I want it to live on my desktop. Under GCC, bouncing ball. I am not going to save it with there. I'm going to just save it right here. I hear you out there. All right. I'm going to name this bouncing ball composite. I'll save that there. All right. Now, before, remember in the beginning of class, I was mentioning not to drag and drop images into After Effects, and there's a reason for that. Let me show you this here. If I were to take this and just select a few of these and then drag it in, you've all of a sudden got all of these files in here that you have to navigate, and then you would have to drag them into the composition one at a time, or like in a big thing. But After Effects doesn't look at it as an image sequence, so essentially you would have to put each image down in there and then line the end, the beginning with the end up of each one in order to make it look like a seamless animation. And that is just not, that's just not, don't do that. That is bad. So we're going to right click down here. We're going to go to Import File. We're going to navigate to where those are. We're going to click on one. And all of a sudden, After Effects down here is going to realize that this is a sequence, right? It's going to look at this one and see that it's got a sequential number after it. And then it's going to notice that every other one in here is named the same, but the number at the end changes, right? There's 3, there's 4, 5, so on and so forth. And so, thankfully, After Effects notice it's automated. And so you want to make sure that PNG sequence box is ticked, and you're going to hit import. And it doesn't import it one image at a time. Instead, it imports this as an entire, like one file, right? As like a sequence itself. So it's like stacked it all for you. You don't have to worry about it. Now, one thing we want to do before we get started is we're going to create a composition, right? So you can either click there or you can hit Control N is the shortcut. We're going to name this main ball bounce. We're going to check that we're in our HD settings. So we're 1920 by 1080. We're at 24 frames a second. And we're going to go, I'll put this in at 10 seconds for now. And then I'll hit enter. And then what I'm going to do is I would normally take this image sequence and I would drag it down. But if you look up here, you notice that it's in 30 frames a second. And we do not want that. We want it at 24 because that's what we're working in the entire semester. And so what you need to do to change this is you right click on to the image sequence and you're going to go to interpret footage and you will click on main. And when you do that, it's going to, you're going to assume this frame rate is 24 frames a second. Once you input this, it should remember that for the next time you do it. Just make sure that when you import another image sequence, you just double check that frame rate there to make sure that it didn't default back to the 30 frames a second. But now that we've interpreted the footage, we're going to grab we're going to grab that and we're going to drag it down into our timeline. And then I'm going to go to the end here. Go over one. And I'm going to zoom in on my timeline for you guys. Go to the beginning and I'm going to hit play. And then all of a sudden we have our animation inside of After Effects. Now let's composite it with a background, right? So I'm going to hit the space bar again. Down here in my timeline, I'm going to right click, hit go to new and down to solid. And then I'm going to make a solid layer. We'll just change this to like, I don't want black. Let's change it to like, what color is that? It's purple. Let's change it to like a blue or like a green might be kind of funny. Blue, we'll go kind of mid-tone blue. Let's try this. Let's see what it looks like. Automatically the solid layer ends up on top. Remember, layer order matters, so we drag it to the bottom. And then that is the power of the PNG with the alpha channel. It is really cool, right? There's just so many more things you can do, like just not just with the bouncing ball, right? But yeah, so we have our first bouncing ball animation that you guys can kind of get your hands dirty with. I am going to start real quick. Like I said, I'm going to go for the next half an hour because I had to start class late. You guys don't have to stay on with me. You're more than welcome to leave the live stream and go. Like I said, I want to be conscious of your time that you guys have right now. But I do also want to get into the frame by frame animation real quick. At least get a chunk of it started for you guys. So this has been saved. I've got my main After Effects file that I've saved and named. This is all in it. I'm going to close this out, right? Because I don't need this at the moment. And then what I want to do, let me see here, is I'm going to open, I created my own template to speed up time for Adobe Animate right here. You'll know it's an Animate file because it says FLA. .FLA is the extension for an Adobe Animate file. Because Adobe Animate used to be Adobe Flash at one point, it had to do with like web-based animations. But no longer is it. They've changed it to Adobe Animate, but it still kept the same file extensions. It's whatever. I don't care really. But let's go ahead and look at this. Let me just check here. The one thing I do want to touch on real quick is I want to come back real quick to this, to our workflow, and show you guys how we just went through our workflow. I mean, we just started, we created the 3D ball, right, in Cinema 4D. We rendered out the PNG sequence, and then we brought it into After Effects and composited it with a background. And so now we're going to start the next step with Adobe Animate, and then we're going to, we won't be exporting out a PNG sequence for this one. Like I said, with Adobe Animate, you can just drag the file and drop it into After Effects. That's the nice thing about all of the Adobe suite is they all work together, so you can pretty much drag and drop any of those in there. But so the first thing we want to do is we want to create a new file. Yours will not, you're going to open up Animate. There is no template inside of the module for now. And so when you open this, it's going to look a little different, but it'll ask you if you want to create a new file, and you will hit yes. Or you can go File, New, and then the settings are going to come up. And we want to make sure that we're working at full HD, right? 1920 by 1080. So you want to make sure the width and the height here are 1920 by 1080. And then the frames a second are at 12 frames a second, not at 24. We do not want to draw that many images, right? We want to cut this in half. Traditional animation was always done at 12 frames a second. There were ways, and we'll talk about this here shortly, that they would sell the motion to look smooth with drawing styles, and they are called smears, and like essentially stretching out and warping the way the object or character looks, and it creates more of a smooth motion. If you get that book that I recommend, the Animator's Survival Kit book, I'm pretty sure that's the name of it, that one will talk about animation smears. And in fact, if you Google it online, you can see some really weird images from some cartoons you might have watched as a kid. Really interesting stuff, though. Definitely more of an artistic approach, and definitely more of a stylized approach, right? Nowadays, a lot of the animations that we see are really smooth because they're automated, right? You place one keyframe, you place another keyframe, and it does all the in-between keyframes for you. The computer does. Here, we're going to be drawing each one at a time. That is probably very smooth. It probably looks really interesting. You should post a video into the chat and show everyone what that looks like, because I'm interested to see it too. With the artist who does the 24 frames a second. But let's get going here. I want to give you guys some ability to like get some of this work done. Like I said, I'm working on my time. It's the first time me teaching this course. And so I'm working on getting the timing down so I can get the appropriate amount of information, enough information to you guys. And I won't leave you high and dry. If I need to move deadlines or anything like that, I will. But just like I said, like I'm not super hard on deadlines right away, as long as you're communicative with me, and we'll get this going. But don't fall behind. I will stress that multiple times throughout class. All right, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit more of a view of the software. All right, so we've created our file. Save your file, right? File, save as, same as every other program. Save it with your name. Settings, 1920 by 1080 at 12 frames a second, 12 FPS, right? If you hit Control and you scroll here in the stage, you can zoom in and out. You can also do that with the plus and minus button if you're holding Control. A little bit of shortcuts there for you. But essentially here you open it up and it looks very similar to like Illustrator or After Effects, kind of like a mashup of both. You have your toolbar here. Here's some panels where you can select your tools, different objects. Down at the bottom, we have your timeline. The timeline's a little bit different though. You don't just take your playhead, put a keyframe scrub, and then do another one, right? We have to create each image on each frame. So, when animating the ball, we want to start off with a guide, right? Because we want to have an area for where the ball hits up at the top, where it's at in the air, where it hits the ground at the bottom, and then bounces back up into the same spot. Because again, what do we want? We want a seamless loop. So the beginning frame and the end frame have to be the same. And so In order to create this, right, I created this guide ahead of time. But normally there'd be a layer in here. I'll create a new one. I'll name this test guide. You just hit return. It'll tell you this. I think it's just going to add a number after. It doesn't allow you to do space in there. It wants you to add like an underscore or something. I don't know. It's finicky like that. But I'm going to hide this one right here. Select our test guide layer. Come up to the toolbar panel, and I'm going to select the brush. And then check over here in my tools. Oh, come on, buddy. There we go. Up here is your properties panel. This is where you're going to change like your brush tools and your brush settings. Right now I'll leave it to the red fill. The size 5 for just the guide is fine. And then I like to have smoothing. I like to have smoothing cranked, especially for drawing a ball, because I'm going to do this with a mouse and you're going to see how much it looks like it sucks. That is okay. I will let you guys know that if you can, GCC offers, they recently got Wacom tablets that you can check out and use. I don't know if you can bring it home or not. I'm unaware about that. You'll have to ask them. But if you guys can get your hands on a Wacom tablet, you can make it look nice and smooth. Unless you guys have one at home, in which you can do it there. So we're inside of our stage here, and I'm gonna hold down Shift and I'm gonna click and drag down, and that's gonna create a nice straight line for our first part of the guide. And then I'm gonna draw a little line right across the top. That's gonna represent our first keyframe. Now, I want the guide, like as soon as I move to the next frame, I don't know why it's doing that. Let me see here. Here, let me tell you this. I'm sorry. The period key moves you forward one frame, and the comma key moves you back a frame. So period is forward, comma is back. If I were to move this forward or play, if I play this animation, let's go to the beginning, hit play. Why is it doing that? Let me see here. First of all, this is a very... We only want it to be 2 seconds. Let me see if I messed something up in my settings real quick. File. Let me see here. I can't remember how to get to project settings. Yeah, I know. I need to right click down here and extend it to the 24th frame. So it's like a guide layer. So essentially what you do, okay, we'll just move to here. Don't lock that. This frame right here, you want to right click on it and you're going to, I think, insert frame. Yes. I'm going to insert the frame here. This is what, I'm missing a step. Okay. The first thing you want to do is you want to go here for where it says 24 and you want to drag, click and drag all the way over, and that highlights all your keyframes. I was like, I'm missing a step. I know I was. So you want to click and drag and you want to highlight all your keyframes, and then you're going to right click and you're going to hit insert keyframe, and that is going to hit insert one keyframe through that all 24 of those frames, right? So if I'm going back here and I go playing it all the way through, it's going to show up there. If I were to have something drawn on here and this frame, but all of a sudden not the frames after, then it would not show up throughout the playback. One thing I want to tell you guys to do real quick is not there. You're going to want to turn on your loop playback. In order for it to just play back what you actually have within your timeline, you don't want it to go all the way to the end and just stop. You want it to loop through the play so you can watch it have a seamless. Oh, F5. Nice. I didn't know there was a shortcut for that. Thanks, Brian. Is that for the adding the single keyframe? Let me know. Or is that just for turning on the playback? Let me try it. Oh, that extends the keyframes one at a time. Huh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. But back to the looping playback. I clicked this, I toggled it on. Notice that all of a sudden there's like this highlighted bar right there. You just want to grab the end and drag it here so that it's going to play back that area. So then when I hit play, which is enter, not space bar, it's going to play through the selected area that we have. And then I'll hit enter again to pause. And then we'll go right back here to the beginning. All right, now let me check here real quick. Now we're going to create a new layer for the ball. So we're going to hit you can also click on a later frame and hit F5 and it'll auto extend it all the way to that frame. That's sweet. Does it do it, is it like one single frame then, Brian? Does it do it like that, or does it do one image on each frame? Like one keyframe on each frame, essentially. Because I'm going to do that manually right now. So I added a new layer in here. I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag it down because you guys don't need to see it right now. Don't worry about the guide 1 or the guide 2 layer. I just haven't those in there for me. So this layer, I'm going to enter, or I'm sorry, not enter, but I'm going to double click here and I'm going to rename it to ball. Because we always name our layers, right? Because it helps us stay organized. And I am going to click and drag all of these keyframes right here. And I'm going to right click. And I am going to put convert to blank keyframes, which is F7 actually. So I'm gonna use my shortcut like Brian's suggesting, and I'm gonna hit. Whoop, I'm gonna drag across there. Let's see if I can do it again and hit F7. Nice. Okay, perfect. Now what you notice is that each one of these little keyframes here, each one of these little boxes has turned into a keyframe. These little circles right there indicate that it's a blank keyframe. But that on each one of them, we're going to have to draw something, right? We need to fill in these keyframes so they're no longer blank. Okay, here. Before we start drawing our ball, there is one thing I want to turn on. One other thing I want to turn on. And that's the onion skinning here. Right there, that little ball right there. I actually think I had it on. Okay. So, onion skinning, what is that, right? It allows you to see the previous drawing as like a reference to what you had. It's just like it's like a reference to what your previous drawing was, right? This is how animators used to animate back in the day. They used to draw each frame on transparent paper so that they could see what was happening on every previous frame. They also, you'll see a lot of animators. Aaron Blaze is one of them that I really like to watch on YouTube. And when he used to animate, you know, he would have the pad of paper and he's just flipping through and drawing at the same time so that he's got a quick reference and flipping through to see those at the same time with like 3 or 4 pages in his hand. And he'll flip and he'll look and then he'll bring it back down and draw a little more. The computer automates this for you, which is great. And so you don't have to wonder what the previous one looked like. So you want to make sure that's toggled on. And over here another bar shows up, right? You can go ahead and drag that all the way to the end, and that'll just make sure that you can see each frame all the way to the back. All the way, I'm sorry, to the end of your image sequence, essentially, to where we're going to be on the timeline. I like to only have it for a few frames because after that, if you have too many on there, it can start to get confusing. But, you know, with usually like 4 or 5, it's enough to let you know kind of where you're going and where you're at each drawing. And so I'm going to go back over here and select my brush tool, which is B. Shortcut is B. And then we're going to go over to the tools panel here. We're going to select a different fill. I'll go ahead and do like a blue one. Let's do a blue ball. And make sure your smoothing is kind of cranked up. And I'm going to increase the size. I'm going to go to like a 30, I think. Click on that and you can type it in. And then I'm going to draw a ball on the first frame. Bear with me. I know it looks like crap. I don't have a Wacom tablet with me right now, or usually I use my iPad, but I let go of that, click and I draw, and then I'm going to hit period, and it's going to move down here to the next blank frame. And then notice when I did that, when I moved to the next frame, this all of a sudden got lighter. That is the onion skinning effect, essentially, right? It's going to get lighter as I go so that it's just like a notification letting me know that is not the frame you're working on. And so then I'm going to draw the ball again. This is really not a ball. Let me go back. Hit period. Draw the ball again. Hit period. Draw the ball again. Period. Draw the ball again. Period. And then we'll draw the ball again. And then we'll go ahead and play this back. I know this is really quick. It's not very pretty, but I'll hit enter. And essentially what you see there is just kind of a ball falling, right? It's not bouncing. It's not doing anything. It looks bad. Right? It just looks like something dropping out of the air and just falling past a window, right? It doesn't actually look like anything's accelerating or decelerating, or like anything's like actually going to bounce or anything like that. And so we need to manually add in that squash and stretch. And we need to add in acceleration and deceleration. So I'm going to stop this, and we are going to delete these keyframes right here. No. Brian, is there a way to delete multiple keyframes at a time with a shortcut? I like Brian's in here. He's got some experience in this, so okay, so we got to integrate gravity and we've got to integrate squash and stretch. Drawing the ball the same distance on every frame is essentially creating linear keyframes, right? There is no acceleration or deceleration with that. There is no space where the ball can go fast or go slow, right? We need to shift F5. Brian, thank you for these. I'll need to write these down so I can remember and put these in. And if you want to throw those in Slack for everyone, these like little shortcuts, that would be great. And I would appreciate it when you have time. No rush though. But anyways, back to this. Drawing the ball at the same distance on every frame, it doesn't cut it, right? It's boring, it's linear, it doesn't look like it's doing anything. And so we need to change essentially the grouping of the balls to make it look either slower or faster. The tighter the balls are in a group, like the tighter the grouping is of the balls, the slower it's going to go. The more space that you have in between each drawing of the ball, the faster it's going to look like it's going. And so we need to kind of map this out, right? We need to plan it. You could do that if you want to, Brian. That would be fine. I wouldn't. You can always do that. You know, sharing, a big thing about animation and motion design is sharing information. So, anyways, we will go a little bit further here. So, we want to update the guide layer. I am going to just show you guys the guide layer that I have here already made. Now, this guide layer is divided up in a very specific way. And each one of these lines, like I said before, equals a keyframe. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 keyframes essentially right here. The plan is to draw a ball at each one of these lines, the center of the ball at each one of these lines, and continue going down. And as the ball starts to go down further, it's going to stretch out, right? In between these, it's going to start to stretch around here and look more oblong. We'll get to that here in a second. But why 9, right? Like, that seems like a really weird number. It is 9 because we're working with 24 frames a second. Let me do this real quick. Let me do some math on here. Let me go down here. Right there. Perfect. We're at 24 frames a second, right? We want to have 9 frames on the way down. So 9 drawings on the way down. 9 going down. We want it to stay on the ground for a second because we're adding exaggeration. We don't want it to go boom, bing, and back up really quickly, right? We want it to go down on the ground, stay there for a few frames, and then come back up. The joy of doing hand-drawn animation is adding all of those characteristics in that make it very unique, right? Like, this is our style. This is where we're throwing in style and kind of flair. And we want to really exaggerate the movement of it because it gives it character. It's going to give the ball more character. If we want it super realistic, we would just film a video, right? But that's not what we're going for here. We want it to look interesting. And so it's going to take 9 drawings, aka 9 frames on the way down. We're going to hold at the bottom for 6 frames, so a 6 frame hold, and then we're going to have 9 frames on the way up. And altogether total, that is 24 frames. And so we'll go ahead and I will get out of that, and we're going to start drawing them here in a second. But let me explain the division of this right here. So we don't want everything cut in half because, again, that would make linear keyframes, right? If we're cutting everything equally in half, it's never going to, we're never going to get what we want. And so essentially we want to cut this into thirds. And so I'm going to go back to my brush settings here, tool, and I'm going to select my test guide layer again. Go to tool, I'll select the red, doesn't matter. I'm going to move fast here. I'm going to go back to size 5, I think it was. And then I'm going to show you kind of how I broke this up. So we've got our tool here. I don't need it selected. Nope, don't want to do that. Okay. And we want to draw the bottom one, right? The bottom frame. So we have the first frame and the 9th frame here. We're going to cut this into a third. And we're going to bring a line right here. And then we're going to take this section and we're going to cut this into thirds. And draw a line there. And that is, so then we have 4 frames here so far. And then we're going to take this section here from the 3rd to the 9th frame. And we are going to cut that into a third. And then we're going to do the same for right here, right? We're going to cut that into a third. And then we're going to add another one down here at the bottom so we can get a little bit of squash going. And then we're going to cut this into a third again. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We need 2 more. So we're going to cut this into a third. This section from the second keyframe to the third one, we're going to go Boop. And now from the third keyframe to this one, we're going to cut this again. Let me do that. In fact, this one actually should be a little bit grouped tighter up here. As long as you're like understanding the concept of how to cut these cut these up, right? The grouping should be tighter up at the top because that's where the ball is decelerating. And it should be more space in between these keyframes here because that's where we're accelerating. We want the images to go quickly. We don't want them to stay in one spot up and for a long time. So let's go ahead and start drawing the ball. And I don't know, I think my mouse was stuck. This live stream is going wild, y'all. We're having fun tonight. I'm gonna hide that guide. Oh my gosh. Let me click on the ball, and we're gonna go up to our tool again. We're gonna pick a blue, I guess, again. We'll go here and we'll change the brush size to 30, not 200, or else we are going to make a massive ball. And I'm going to just do this kind of quick for you guys, okay? So we're going to draw it here. It's a nice oval shape. We're going to move a frame ahead, period. We're going to draw it here, center of the ball, same circular shape. We're going to move a frame ahead. I think I need to do this here. Wait, Brian, you said to do that and then hit F5. This one. No. You can also click on the later frame. Click on the later frame and then hit F5. Nice. Got you, Brian. Thank you, dude. Anyway, so we'll go back. I wanted to just extend that guide layer so I could see it. So we're on the third frame now. We're going to draw the ball here. Make sure that when you're drawing the ball, each time that it's remaining the same in, make sure you're selected on the correct layer. You want to be on the ball layer down here. Then we're going to draw this one again and make sure that the ball remains the same in volume at this moment, whether you're stretching it or squashing it or whatnot. We're going to move a frame ahead. We're going to do this. Move a frame ahead. We're going to start to get oval shaped, making sure it remains the same visually in volume, right? We can't like actually measure the volume of the ball, but visually it should remain the same. And we'll move another frame ahead, and we're going to get a little more oval shaped. Move a frame ahead, another. Oh, I'm not staying in the middle now. I'm getting real wild. I'm going quick, guys. Another frame ahead. It's going to start to squish down here. So we're going to draw it. Let me go back. We're going to draw it a little bit more circular. And then remember, I believe we're at 9 frames now. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Now we're going to do 6 frames at the bottom. And so we're going to draw it with the squish though. So we want to draw kind of flattened. So it's going to start to expand out on that y-axis. And we're going to exaggerate it a little bit, and we're going to kind of start to shape it like a bean. Forgive my mouse drawings. And then we'll go to the next one. How many was that? 2. And then we're going to go out again. 3. Then we're going to go out again. 4. 5. 6. Starting to get back. Now we're about to go up. 7. You want to start to get that oblong shape going back up. 8, 9, 10. It's gonna start to get more of a circle shape now. less oblong. Oh shit. I mean, shoot. I'm sorry, you guys. Back to more of a circle. Period. Remember, periods and commas will take you back or forward. More of a circle. It's getting tighter and tighter and slowing down. Here at the top. I think I skipped a frame in there because I'm moving kind of quick because I want to get you guys going here. But as soon as I play it, you see it. You see the animation of the ball. You do want to make sure that the bottom frame is the same as the top frame. So you want to draw those pretty close together. If you don't, you can always copy it. Copy and paste it, I believe. I believe you can do that in here. Let me stop this. Make sure you're counting your frames correctly. Like I said, I'm moving a little fast right now because I want to get you guys going. But you count out your frames. You're going to do 9 frames going down, 6 frames at the bottom, and 9 frames going up. You don't change frame. You don't add frames in between, right? You don't add the amount of keyframes that there are in an animation. Frames are a fixed thing. We don't add them. We don't subtract them to make things appear faster or slower, right? We change the way the animation looks in order to make that appearance happening. But like with it stretching out here and then squashing here at the bottom, we're adding exaggeration to it. We're adding that character. Let me go ahead. I've been saving it randomly. I've been randomly saving it. I'll have to shut that off next time I do a stream. Throughout drawing, just hitting Control S here. But let me just do a quick recap for you. And let you guys know that we're using like 3 different styles here, right? With the 3D ball in Cinema 4D, the 2D ball in Adobe Animate, and the 2D ball within After Effects. The styles are different for a reason, right? We don't want them all to look the same. And so that's why we're really spending some time with this one, making it look extra exaggerated. Now there is, let me close this. You guys can go ahead and watch maybe a little bit of a longer and slower. I'm sorry. Let me explain that a little bit more for you guys, Brian. It should be 24 keyframes. You will be drawing, I guess you're drawing 24, aren't you? We want it to be 24 keyframes long. So 2 seconds essentially, because 1 second down, 1 second up. Like the second going down, it pauses it down there, and that's part of it, and then the 12 frames are the other second up. So it's really 12 frames a second, right? Because the total animation should be 2 seconds long, which would equal 24 frames. I can see how that's confusing. Does that make sense to you, the way I just described it? If it doesn't, I can try and describe that differently for you. But when we create the file, we want it to say 12 frames a second, but we only want to go to the 24th frame because we want it to be a 2-second video. So essentially we're drawing 2 seconds worth of the ball. But I'm actually going to guide you guys here too, because I realized I went kind of fast through that. I kind of had to because I wanted to get through it. But right here, I would suggest watching this video that Casey Farina did under your module, under your bouncing ball module. You're going to have to watch the After Effects one, but you guys already have an idea of what After Effects is like, so go ahead and watch this After Effects video. And then watch this one again if you want a little bit more of an in-depth look into Adobe Animate, into a little bit more time into there. But yeah, so that's where we're kind of at right now. Just a real quick recap on the Animate. Let me see here. Text. You want to add a guide layer. Extend that keyframe. And then you want to add a ball layer. And remember, the guide layer, you want it to be divided into thirds. Brian, I would do it like this. You know, you could try it if you've done it. Sounds like you work and animate a lot, so it sounds like you have done this before. But why don't you do 2 versions of it for us? Because I don't know, it should match up. That should match up, because what we're going to do is we're going to composite all of the balls, like all 3 of them together, into the file, and then we're going to render that out, but they all should bounce and hit the ground at the same time, and they should all last at the same time as well. And so you can try it that way and see if it works, if it matches up with the other balls, and if not, I would just do it this way to see if that works. But back to here, so we're going to add the ball layer. What I was saying, make sure on the guide layer that you want to break that up by thirds essentially each time. Adding the ball layer, you're going to create blank keyframes. Turn on onion skin. And also turn on your loop playback. One second. This is the only problem with having too much real estate for screens. And now I can't find, let me see here. A period and comma are forward and back keyframes. Yeah. That's all we this is just kind of a quick recap of what we did there. You will import the FLA file. You'll import that actual animate file into Adobe After Effects in the project panel when you go to do this. And then you can, and it will have the transparency layer on it, and then you'll drag that FLA file down into your timeline on your composition, and then you can match it up with the 3D ball that we did. We're all set for tonight. You guys, thank you for hanging in there and being patient with all of the issues. I wanted to just get this done real quick for you and touch base on this. This is due on Monday. Like I said, you go ahead and watch. I want you guys to watch the Animation Foundations video on LinkedIn Learning. And then you're going to create this. The little lines and stuff, you will learn how to do that, I believe, in this video. I believe it's this one that Casey adds lines like little exaggeration lines and the motion lines and stuff to the ball. Make sure that when you're going through your workflow, right, you're going to create them all in these, and then you're going to composite them all into After Effects. And then later we can add titles. You guys don't have to worry about that right now. I just want to make sure that you guys actually understand the basic like motion of the ball bounce, right? We want to see the acceleration down, deceleration on the way back up, adding a little squash and stretch. You don't have to add the squash and stretch for the After Effects one. You guys can go ahead and watch that video. I don't believe it's in that one anyways. But you will add a little bit of motion blur. You'll notice that. Make sure that your deliverables are correct when you go to output this. Read things twice before you do it. And then you can submit it. If you have any questions for me, let me know. I might not be able to answer them right away depending on how busy I am and stuff, but I will try. And good job. Good job today, class. Good job for hanging in there with me, and I appreciate it. So, real quick, Brian. So, what was the frame exposure you recommend for the bouncing ball? How many frames it goes down, hits the ground, etc. Okay. So, 24 total frames in 2 seconds. You're talking about the animate, correct, Brian? Before I end this, Brian has a quick question. Adobe Animate. We want 2 seconds of animation. And so it'll be 24 frames total. 9 of those frames should be down, like the ball should be going down. 6 of those frames should be staying on the ground. And then 9 of those frames should be going back up. And remember to match up the bottom and the top keyframe if you can, as best as you can. And let me move my... I didn't realize my video. I'm sorry, you guys. I might shut the video off at some points when I'm like trying to get this, because that's the issue that I'm having with the real estate and the different layouts of the programs. But does that help you, Brian? Writing this out for you? I hope it does, Brian. If there's an issue or anything, just go ahead and write me back. But have a good night, class. Thanks for hanging in. Sorry it was extra long today. I'll try and shorten next class.